I started to feel a lump form in my throat as I stared at the message on my phone. It was from my son, the same son who disowned me 9 years ago and chose to live with his dad and stepmom. And now, after all these years, he was asking for my mom's heirloom to gift to his girlfriend. My heart ached at the thought of the precious family heirloom, a necklace my mother had given me before she passed away. It was something that had been passed down through generations and held immense sentimental value for our family. I couldn't just hand it over to my son like it was any other trinket. I tried to push down the feelings of hurt and resentment that were bubbling up inside me. I took a deep breath and started typing out a reply to my son's message. "I'm sorry, son," I wrote. "I've already given the necklace to someone else who deserved it more." I hit send and waited for his response, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't long before his message came through. "What do you mean someone else deserved it more? That necklace has been in our family for generations. It's rightfully mine," he wrote. I took a deep breath and started to explain my side of the story. "You left me, son," I wrote. "You chose to live with your dad and stepmom, and it felt like you disowned me. I was hurt, and I needed to find a way to cope. That's when I met someone who became very important to me. She helped me through a tough time in my life, and I felt like she deserved the necklace more than anyone else." I hit send, feeling a sense of relief as I finally expressed my feelings to my son. But the relief was short-lived as his message popped up on my screen. "I can't believe you would do this to me," he wrote. "You always put your new family above me. I thought you would come around, but I guess I was wrong." I started getting teary as I read his words. I couldn't believe how much pain I had caused my own son, and I didn't know how to fix it. I wanted to tell him how much I loved him and how much I missed him over the years, but the words got stuck in my throat. I sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing with memories of my son's childhood. I remember the way his face would light up whenever I gave him a hug, the sound of his laughter as he played with his toys, and the way he would cling to my hand when we crossed the street. But all those memories felt like they belonged to another lifetime, a lifetime that was now long gone. My son was no longer that little boy who looked up to me with adoration in his eyes. He was a grown man with his own life, his own priorities, and his own pain. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, a sudden realization hit me. I couldn't change the past, but I could make amends for my mistakes. I could try to bridge the gap between my son and me. I wiped away my tears and started typing out a message to my son. "Son, I'm sorry," I wrote. "I know I've made mistakes and I wish I could go back and change things, but I can't. All I can do is try to make things right, but on one condition: we meet in person and have an honest conversation about everything that's happened between us. Can we do that?" I hit send. As I waited for my son's reply, my heart raced with anticipation. I knew that meeting him in person would be difficult, but it was something that needed to happen if we were ever going to repair our relationship. After what felt like an eternity, his reply finally came through. "Okay," he wrote, "I'll meet you, but I can't promise it's going to change anything. I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that he was willing to meet me even if he wasn't sure about the outcome. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the following day, and I spent the rest of the evening trying to prepare myself for what was to come. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I saw my son sitting at a table in the corner. He looked older than I remembered, with lines etched around his eyes and a weariness in his posture. But he still had the same smile that could light up a room, and my heart swelled with love for him. I walked over to the table and sat down across from him, unsure of where to begin, but my son beat me to it. "Why did you give the necklace to someone else?" he asked, his voice tinged with anger. I took a deep breath and tried to explain myself as honestly as I could. I told him about the pain I'd felt when he chose to live with his dad and stepmom, and how I had tried to find solace in someone else's company. I told him that I loved him and missed him, and that I regretted the way things turned out between us. "Why did you give the necklace to someone else?" he asked again, his voice tinged with anger. I took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. "Because she deserved it more," I replied firmly. My son's eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you mean she deserved it more? That necklace has been in our family for generations. It's a symbol of our history and our heritage. How could you just give it away?" I felt a fire ignite inside me as I listened to him speak. For years, I had let my son's bitterness and anger control our relationship. But now, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't going to let him bully me anymore. "I gave it to someone who has always been there for me," I said, my voice steady. "Someone who supported me when I was going through a difficult time. Someone who showed me love and compassion when I needed it the most. And you know what? She deserves that necklace more than anyone else in this world." My son stared at me, his eyes narrowing with anger. "You're being ridiculous," he said. "I can't believe you would prioritize someone else over your own son. It's just messed up." I stood up from the table and faced him, my heart pounding in my chest. "You know what's messed up?" I said. "The way you've treated me for the past 9 years. The way you disowned me and went to live with your dad and stepmom without a second thought. The way you've spoken to me. The way you've hurt me. That's messed up. And I'm not going to let you guilt trip me into giving you something that you don't deserve." My son's face turned red with anger, but I didn't back down. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of our relationship. And I wasn't going to let him take that away from me. In the end, my son stormed out of the coffee shop, his anger and bitterness still simmering just beneath the surface. But as I watched him go, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I had stood up for myself, and I knew that I was on the path to finding my own sense of strength and self-worth, no matter what anyone else thought. Update 1. A month had passed since my son stormed out of the coffee shop. In that time, I had heard nothing from him, and I had resigned myself to the fact that our relationship might never be repaired. But one day, as I was sitting at home watching TV, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me to answer it. When I heard my son's voice on the other end, "Mom," he said, his voice sounding tired and defeated, I need to talk to you." I felt a wave of mixed emotions wash over me. Part of me was angry at him for the way he had treated me, while another part of me was hopeful that this was a sign that he wanted to make things right. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I don't know," he finally said. I guess I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way I've treated you over the years, and I'm sorry for the way I reacted when you told me about the necklace. I didn't realize how much it meant to you, and I didn't realize how much I had hurt you." I listened to him speak, my heart softening with each word. For years, I had waited for my son to apologize to me, to acknowledge the pain he had caused me. And now, as I heard his voice on the other end of the line, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. "I'm sorry too," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "I'm sorry for the way I reacted when you confronted me about the necklace. I know I hurt you, and I wish I could take it back. But I want to make it clear that even if you hadn't asked me for the necklace, I wouldn't have given it to you. If you're apologizing because of the necklace, then I have to tell you that it doesn't change anything. Our relationship still has a long way to go, but I'm willing to try if you are." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought that I had said too much. But then my son spoke up, his voice a little stronger than before. I understand, he said. And I'm not just apologizing because of the necklace. I'm apologizing for everything. For the way I've treated you over the years, for the way I've shut you out of my life. I want to make things right between us, even if it takes a long time. I felt a small glimmer of hope stir inside of me as I listened to my son speak. It was clear that he still had a lot of work to do and that our relationship was far from perfect. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page and that we both wanted to try to build something new between us. I want that too, I said, my voice softening. I want to start over, to build something new between us, and I want to do it together. As we hung up the phone, I felt a sense of cautious optimism wash over me. I knew that there would still be bumps in the road, that there would still be times when we would disagree or argue. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a chance to rebuild what we had lost and to find a way back to each other. The son had no right to demand the necklace from his mother after disowning her and refusing to have a relationship with her for years. He was being selfish and entitled by expecting his mother to give him a valuable family heirloom just because he asked for it. The son should have respected his mother's decision to give the necklace to someone else who deserved it more, instead of pressuring her to change her mind. His request for the necklace showed a lack of empathy and consideration for his mother's feelings. OP was right to prioritize the person who deserved the necklace more rather than giving it to her son just because he asked for it. Her decision to give the necklace to someone else who deserved it more showed that she was thoughtful and considerate and had a good sense of judgment. OP should not have felt guilty for not giving the necklace to her son, as it was her property to do with as she pleased. Next story. Been up all night thinking about this and just want to get people's opinions. I, 22, female, and my husband, 23, male, took in my brother, 19, male, and his girlfriend, 18, female, early November 2022 when they were kicked out of their last apartment due to disagreements with their previous roommates. I won't get into details about their business, but any and all friendships were broken between them and their ex-roommates. It wasn't an easy decision to let them move in. My brother was not easy to grow up with. He was constantly in trouble, stealing, lying, causing problems at school. I didn't want to trust him in my apartment, especially when me and my husband weren't home. But if I didn't let him move in, he would have been on the streets. One of the few rules that we had for them was that my brother had to get a job within the first month, or they had to find another place to live. He got a job within the first 2 weeks, which I was like, hey, he's turning his life around. He lost it after only a week. Says he got fired because they found a better person for the job. But I knew that was a lie since I used to work for the company and they were always hiring because they couldn't get people to stay with them long enough. He found another job where his girlfriend works, but he only works a few days a week. We were already having issues with them living with us, but nothing major. But come Christmas time, they announced that she is pregnant. Me and my husband are beyond pissed at this point because they could barely afford what we charged them for rent, and how would they afford to have a baby when they couldn't afford their own place? So now come the new year. My husband and I are struggling to make ends meet. I have been out of a job since late October, my new job starting in less than 2 weeks. If we hadn't taken the two of them in, we would have been fine on just my husband's income. We took money out of our bank accounts to pay rent for this month. My husband had it in his pocket when he went to the bathroom and had accidentally left the money in there. It hasn't been more than a few hours of it being in there when he noticed and went to grab it. $40 went missing. I didn't take it. My husband didn't take it. And nobody else has access to our apartment besides my brother and his girlfriend. My husband already confronted my brother over the phone since he was on his way to work and I was going to sleep. He works third shift and my brother denied it up and down. I'm done. And tomorrow, or should I say later today, I'm going to tell them they have until the end of the month to get out. And I don't care where they go, but I will not tolerate them stealing from me when we went out of our way to help them when they were going to be homeless. They knew this would be temporary. When they first moved in, they were given a time frame of 3 to 5 months to get their own place. AITA? NTA. They have far extended their time period to find a new place. They are clearly stealing from you. They are lying to you. They are draining your bank accounts. If you don't kick them out, they will get even more comfy and never leave. You were kind to take them in, but they need to learn to survive on their own 2 feet and take care of themselves, especially with a child on the way. All of this, and then the obvious. You never signed up to live with the baby part. Pregnancy is their guarantee that you won't throw them out. Letting them move in wasn't a good move because you had to know he wouldn't suddenly grow up. Kicking them out will open up loud protests about how cruel you are, how they will have the baby on the sidewalk, etc. Just steel yourself for that and not give in. Look up social services and local shelters. At some point, they need to take responsibility for their lives, but they won't do that if they convince you that any consequence they face will be your responsibility. Next story. My husband and I are going on a short trip to Rome for my birthday in a few weeks' time. We're both looking forward to it, and he's never been to Italy, so he is especially so. While chatting with my family on New Year's Eve, I found out that my brother and his wife have an upcoming trip planned to Italy as well. Coincidentally, arriving the day after my husband and I are due to fly out. A shame because it's been ages since we've seen them in person as we live in different countries. I am close to my brother, so when he asked if we would be willing to extend our trip and come join him in Florence, and told me that he'd cover our hotel as a birthday gift to me, I was excited to discuss it with my husband. Unfortunately, he can't take any additional time off of work. I have the time myself as I am currently unemployed, so the initial trip would be entirely on him. I wouldn't want to be an additional financial burden by asking him to pay for an extension he can't even enjoy himself. But I have a little money of my own saved up, so I said I would handle the flight change fees, train to Florence, and additional expenses myself. His reaction when I told him that was more sullen than anything, but he had no objections to me extending the trip otherwise. Or so I thought, because he went off on a mini rant about increasing costs of living and expenses and how he has to work to support the both of us. But how can I say no when I don't have to spend any more money on that, etc.? I was taken aback because we are obviously keeping an eye on our expenses, given we are a one-income household right now. But I had expected a better reaction than that from him. Maybe more along the lines of, I wish I could go to Florence with you, but since I can't, I hope you have a blast there with your family. I told him as much, and he went off in a huff, but he came back and apologized later. Yesterday, I made the arrangements with the airline for a flight change and did some research on what to do, see in Florence. I've been there a few times before, but I love exploring new places, so I enjoy doing that. I didn't tell any of that to my husband as I suspected he was still a bit sore, jealous about my trip. Sure enough, this morning he was grumpy and distant towards me, and when I called him out on it, he said he's still trying to work through his feelings about the Florence thing. I said we still have a Rome vacation coming up with just the two of us, and that we are going to have a lovely time there, and he said he knows that, but that his enthusiasm has dampened since the Florence thing came up. I understand where these feelings are coming from, but secretly, I think he's being a bit of a baby about it, and his grumpiness towards me is dampening my enthusiasm for the trip. AITA? ETA. My current state of unemployment is because I had to leave my job 4 months ago due to post-COVID complications. Recovery has been tough, but things have improved enough that my husband and I decided on taking this birthday trip to celebrate. As far as the finances are concerned, our agreement always was to create separate budgets for our nest egg, our household, and to have separate personal savings. He, for example, just bought himself a new PS4 game with his, so we are not in the red. We have not significantly tapped into our emergency funds, and we have no rent or mortgage to pay. Also, relevant, I was in his position of being sole breadwinner in the past because I supported the both of us when he took time off from his career to work towards his master's. So I can fully empathize with the stress of that, and I don't intend on unnecessarily prolonging my unemployment. And while not regularly employed now, as I understand the definition, I still am in touch with my old company, which values my previous work with them enough to have given me a freelance project that I am currently working on. I have only received partial payment for that as of now, but most of that went into our household fund. I did offer to cover some expenses for our trip using the rest of it, but my husband waved away that suggestion as I have gifted him with trips too in the past, and it's just something we like to do for each other. All that being said, I recognize I have been insensitive to his feelings in expecting him to be 100% okay with Florence. At least not immediately. I am happy to say we've talked it out since I posted this and aired everything out on both sides. Feathers have been unruffled now, and we're back to being excited to plan our time together in Rome. Whoa, whoa, everybody. Are you all jealous of her extended trip? Resentment and negativity from so many responses. She was the sole breadwinner when her husband was getting his master's degree. Her company wants her back and has even given her a special project that she's getting paid for. This is a chance for her to see her brother who lives in another country. Whatever her husband bought to play with has nothing to do with anything. I'm a boomer, and frankly, all of these games are toys, but understand I'm not faulting him, just pointing out how irrelevant it is. When men, or women, try to pull their spouse away from their own family members, that's scary, bordering on isolation. If the husband were extending his trip because of a sister who he rarely sees, parallel situation, I would say go for it. Soft YTA. I get that you're excited about going to Florence and seeing your brother, but think about it from his perspective. He's the one working to support you. It probably took time to save up for this trip. Now you get to stay on vacation while he has to go to work to pay the bills that allow you the freedom to spend more time on vacation. He snapped, but he apologized the next day. It happens. You now know that he's sore about it. Instead of dropping it, you proceed to tell him about all of the fun things that you want to do while you're there. Things that he can't do because he has to go back to work to pay the bills. Do you really expect him to be excited for you? Maybe you expect him to make suggestions about the things you should do without him? Don't keep bringing it up. You're rubbing salt in the wound. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.